Welcome to the Endo podcast. This week we will be talking with Lucy Childerley, a nutritionist who specialises in all things hormones. Hi Lucy, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for asking me on your podcast. Super excited.
Thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you. The first thing I was going to ask you about was, could you tell us what inspired you to focus on women's hormone health and menopause nutrition?
Yeah, I think it's come from quite a long time ago. I mean, I'm 51 now. I'm talking when I was like 15. All my grandparents had died by then. My youngest one was 47 when he died. And I think I had a moment of, crikey, our genes are not good and our health isn't good. Or I didn't think it was that good. And so I just got really fascinated by health then. So I went on to do a sports science degree, which included nutrition and exercise, obviously. And then from there, I just got more and more interested in health, diet, movement, set up my personal training business that I still have now that runs alongside the nutrition business, which is brilliant. But our hormonal thing came when we were trying for a baby. So I've got half a womb, which you don't realise these things till you're trying for a baby. It's very rare, apparently.
I'm so sorry. That is very rare.
I think it's 1 in 250,000 people have it. So yeah.
Wow. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that.
No, it's nature gives you what it gives you, doesn't it? But at the time, it was hard to conceive because of that. And we did eventually have our son, which I now realise was an absolute miracle.
Excellent. So I didn't actually want to go in with that question in case you were going to say no, but I am so glad to hear that. That's amazing.
Honestly, it was absolute miracle. And then it was when we were trying for our second child that things really started to be difficult, really tricky.
Yeah.
We just couldn't conceive. I had lots of miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, and it was really stressful. And then around that time, because of the stress, my hair started falling out terribly. It was another, I realize now, I didn't realize at the time, was to do with stress. And then I got a lump on my breast, which I was, oh my goodness. I mean, I was very lucky because it was just fibrocystic lump, but nonetheless.
But you still get a fright, a massive fright, of course.
Honestly, huge. And you're waiting for that diagnosis. It's terrifying, waiting to find out what the outcome is going to be. And like I say, I'm very lucky and I'll be forever grateful for that. But the stress had just caused all these imbalances in my body, even though I was on all these different medications for fertility. And my husband was getting really stressed as well, because obviously it takes two to tango. And he was getting stressed. So hit him in his gut. And so he ended up having really bad gut issues. And he was on omeprazole, and we couldn't go out for dinner very easily without him having a problem. And I just started reading more and more. Obviously, as a personal trainer, I was exercising well. He's very active, very fit. We were eating well, but I just thought I've got to read more into this. So I did, and I started tweaking. I said to him, we're going to change our diet a bit more. So we changed some things over. And honestly, Michelle, it was just like life-changing.
That's amazing.
Honestly, within a few months, within 1 month, he said he felt 7 years younger.
Wow.
And he had no gut issues, and he was off the omeprazole and all the painkillers and everything, which obviously, again, would make him eventually feel so much better just being off them. And I was off all the fertility things. My period was regular for the first time that ever been in my whole life. No more lumps on my breast, and my hair, thank God, stopped falling out.
So it stopped when you changed your diet?
Totally.
It's so interesting because you were saying, even for going out for dinner, so it was affecting both of your daily lives, having to deal with this.
It really was. And for him, it wasn't just his gut. It had systemic impact, which it does when you get leaky gut. So things like leaky gut can cause you sort of brain issues. So he'd be quite irritable, and he's so mellow and happy and chill normally, but he was quite grumpy and very sleepy. As soon as he sit down, he'd fall asleep. And he was losing his quality of life, because he was tired all the time, felt pretty irritable, and had gut issues. So, and we were getting nowhere with just the medications because it was like firefight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you feel out of control when it's like that, because you think, well, where does this end? What am I? Is this my life? And so when we could do things ourselves, it was so empowering. So then I decided to study nutrition, because I just thought I've got to know more about this and help more people. So I did a 3-year diploma in nutrition. And then I set up the clinic, and I was wanting to look at hormones because obviously for my fertility journey. And I started to look into that. And then I was heading towards perimenopause, and I thought there wasn't much out about it then. So I thought, I'm going to start looking into this. It's really interesting. And then it sort of escalated. And then Davina came along and announced menopause to the world, and the clinic.
Yes, she did, of course. Yeah.
I'm forever grateful for Davina, because
I know,
the clinic,
so helpful.
The clinic went crazy. It went absolutely crazy. And it's been really busy ever since because women want another option. I work alongside menopause GPs. So sometimes we do a combo of HRT and natural stuff. Sometimes they just want to do everything natural because they don't want to or can't take HRT. But what it
Yes.
does is it gives you what I do. You end up giving the woman the power back to be able to make those decisions for yourself. And that's so nice. Just that alone reduces that stress because you're not reliant on a next pill, which eventually, will
Yeah.
stop working, or you'll need another one because that's got a side effect. And I just think it's amazing. And so I just feel really honored to be able to help other women be able to get back control as well. Because, when people come to me, they're desperate.
Sorry, it is amazing, Lucy, because I was actually just having a conversation with my mum. So she's 68, I'm 40, and my mum did have breast cancer when she was 41. So when she became menopausal, I hadn't heard of the word perimenopausal till probably within the last 5 years, maybe less. But she wasn't allowed to take HRT
Hmm.
because she had had the breast cancer or the type of breast cancer she had had. And we were just having this discussion because I'm now on estrogen and progesterone because I had the hysterectomy and the oophorectomy in April. So I was just saying to her, oh, it must have been really hard for you to have to deal with that without HRT. And she actually just said, no, like it was okay. And she talks about diet, exercise. She was very much like into yoga, holistic therapy. She used to climb Monroe's. She's too old now, but she used to climb Monroe's. And she said, honestly, Michelle, like it wasn't that bad. And that I think a lot of that came from her being informed and being mindful of nutrition. So that's so interesting that that's just exactly what's came up here.
Yeah, totally. It is so powerful, honestly. I mean, having been there, been on the whole journey I've been on, it just blows my mind still now, the power, what we have at the end of our fingertips if we want to make the effort to do it and actually stick to it. But how I work with clients is it's so gradual that things that they thought they'd never be able to do in 3 months, they're doing and not even thinking about it. And they've layered up the things that we do. So things just become normal to them. And that
Yes.
they then start to feel like your mum probably felt without not doing them, felt abnormal. But when they did them, that felt becomes just their way of life. It's what they do to feel
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're running the Lucy Childerley Clinic. What kind of support do women typically come to you for?
So the main cohort of women I work with are perimenopausal, menopausal women, which I love because there's so much we can do, but we can do so much at any point. And then it's all other hormonal conditions. So I'll see their daughters for PMS. I deal with PMDD, which is really bad, quite serious PMS, and people are still sort of learning about that.
Yes.
But there's suicidal thoughts with that. It can't be taken lightly. So we look at that.
Mhm.
Thyroid conditions, hypo is main one as opposed to hyper, so more slow thyroid I tend to see in clinic. Then we've got things like endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, and then gut issues, digestive issues, bloating, IBS, those sort of things we'll look at. So it's a real mix of people that I see. I also do see some men.
Excellent.
Because of my husband, I developed this gut
Yeah.
restoration program, and with that, I just decided to, because my husband saw so much benefit, and so many men that I really, and women, but a lot of men are on omeprazole and lansoprazole and things,
Yeah.
and they think that they could just stay on that, they don't get told any different. So we work to get their gut more supported. So that's the male side of it. But mainly, I'd say 80% of the clinic is women of all ages, but probably out of that 80%, 60% are perimenopausal, menopausal women, and they're just looking for that root cause. They want something where they're going to get answers. They might have tried what their friends have tried. The
Yes.
internet's brilliant, but it hasn't worked for them. The internet's brilliant, but it's so much overwhelm and things contradict, and you've got false
Yes.
information. It's hard to sift through the noise.
And I think as well, not one thing is going to work for every single person. And people
Exactly.
can really advocate for one thing that they've had a good experience with, which is great. And please do keep advocating for something that's worked for you, but also it might not work for the next person and vice versa and vice versa. So, I mean, having somebody who can actually sit down, who has experience and saying, well, that might help these symptoms, but not those, and let's bit of trial and error and just the support as well. The internet doesn't provide the same level of support as speaking to a nutritionist. It's never going to be able to do that. So I think what you're doing is excellent. It's really, really good.
Thank you.
What role can a nutritionalist play in balancing female hormones?
Our role's massive. So it's not just nutrition. It's obviously a lot about nutrition, but we'll also look at
Uh-huh.
lifestyle, and we'll look at all the different pillars that come in to impact hormone balance. So, and at the end of the day, hormones are made by the food we eat. So that very simple sentence, if we eat, they're not just processed, they are made in our body. And if we put rubbish food in, lots of ultra processed foods, we're going to get, poorer quality hormones being made. And we obviously want to get the best hormones we can. We want the receptors to be really strong. But food really provides the building blocks for our hormones. It helps with good cofactors for the enzymes, but it also fuels the organs that are really important within hormone balance, like the gut and the liver and the adrenal glands. So we look at the body as a whole and not just as the endocrine system. We'll look at the gut, the liver. We'll tend to work on in clinic 4 main pillars. So we look at blood sugar balance, because that's so important. If our blood sugars are in balance and we're getting mountains and valleys all day long through lots of caffeine, lots of sugary foods, lots of carbohydrates, not enough protein, healthy fats, for instance, a lot of stress, then we're on this sort of mountain valley, up, down all day. And the end result of that is exhaustion, low mood. We can feel quite wide at the top, quite tired at the bottom.
Yep.
It's a massive sort of result of that. So blood sugar management's really important. Blood sugar management's really important for polycystic ovaries as well. It's also really important for estrogen, progesterone, thyroid function. So blood sugar management or balance is really important. We will look at gut health as well, like I said. So yes, you're looking at nutrition for the gut, like feeding the gut with the right things, because we've got the microbiome. You've heard of the microbiome in the gut.
I have, yeah. I'm loving this. So I do know that nutrition affects how we feel and like our tiredness, our energy levels, our skin, our weight, everything. But I didn't know that the food affected hormones directly, and that is so interesting. And I have heard of the microbiome system, but could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the microbiome is, we know the gut is linked with the brain. There's a gut-brain axis, and they're completely interrelated. See, this is where we know things intuitively, but we don't know them almost, because we just use these phrases like, I've got butterflies in my tummy, because you're worried about something in your head. That is that gut-brain axis working. You're worried about, but you don't see it like that. Equally, if your gut's really off and you feel like your tummy's a bit funny, you'll feel potentially more anxious or have more brain fog in your brain. So the two are like a physical cable, a vagal nerve is linking the two.
Right.
But now we're doing so much research on gut. The gut's considered the second brain. It's so fundamental to how we feel, how we think, and how the rest of the body kind of works, including your hormones, like your thyroid hormone. Some of that is converted in the gut. And then in the gut, we've also got a small section of the microbiome called the estrobolome. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't. Is it related to estrogen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I just by the name I guessed that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well done. Yeah, yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
So
What's
that one
that?
part, that bit of that microbiome is dealing just with estrogen metabolism and whether you absorb too much or too little. So it's controlled by certain enzymes and bacterial composition of the gut. So if the gut bacteria from the foods we eat or the things we put in our body, or we get more toxins or pathogens from food poisoning or something, whatever ends up in the gut can impact how we feel throughout our whole body. Because when the gut gets sort of inflamed, we'll see more leaky gut, will then start to leak toxins and pathogens and bacteria and proteins into the bloodstream. And this is when we'll see more autoimmune conditions and more food sensitivities and skin issues and brain issues. And literally your whole body can be impacted. So the gut's so important to hormones. Plus serotonin is pretty much all made in the gut. And that links with our mood, and that converts to melatonin to help our sleep. So the guts, spend a lot of time looking at gut. And a lot of people don't realize that interlink that they have, that actually if you're not having a daily bowel movement and you're constipated because that's what you've always been, so that's normal for you. Like if I ask someone, do you go to the toilet regularly? Yeah. How many times? 2 or 3 times a week? I'm like, right, okay, this isn't regular. We need to be emptying those bowels. Think of putting the bins out at the end of every day. You don't want that hot, warm, that food caddy fermenting in your body, releasing toxins overnight. You just don't want that. So we need to put the bins out every day.
It's such a good way to look at it. Like, that's so I know that there's something wrong because I'm quite regular. If it's been 2 days, I'm already like, I wonder what's going on. And it's usually I'll end up that there is something. It's maybe just that I've not been eating enough fruit and veg, and then I can fix that quite quickly. But that's actually so interesting because a friend once said to me about having headaches if she was constipated, and I
Yeah.
And she said that, oh, you know how you get a headache when you're constipated? I was like, no, I've never heard of that. And again, symptoms will be different for each person, but that comment now makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. We also look at the liver. So we look at the gut liver axis is very important because the liver will check everything that comes in the body to see if it's friend or foe, release the nutrients into the body, and then put the waste into the bowel. But if those detoxification pathways in the liver aren't working optimally, you can start recirculating. They can push it back into the body again. So then you can get a toxin or old estrogen overload or old hormone overload in the body. The other way, we also want to make sure those pathways are opening really well. So we just work bit by bit to make sure, start layering in foods and lifestyle techniques and ways of eating and hydration to gradually get each part of the body working as it should. Because when you give the body, it's so clever, when you give the body the right tools and you're patient, it can just come online. And everyone's different. I work with girls that are sort of 15. Well, their bodies transform in like a matter of a couple of weeks because they're young.
Yes.
I might work with somebody who's in their 60s, who's on 13 different medications. Their body takes a longer time, but inevitably they all get there in the end. If you allow the body the time to let it heal. But there's like a cross point in naturopathic nutrition where when you cross that point, it's considered that it's almost hard to come back. Once you've gone into that disease state, once you've got heart disease, once you've got diabetes, it's harder then to come back. When you're on the journey towards them, you've got things you can do to pull back.
Right, so it's easier to prevent these things from happening if we know we're heading there than to reverse them once they kick in.
100%.
That's really, really important information. So we've touched on some of this already. You've talked about how dietary choices can affect things, but how do they affect directly things like fatigue, brain fog, bloating, mood swings, things that we do have generally in female health conditions like PMDD or endometriosis?
Yeah, I mean, food, obviously coming back to that blood sugar balance thing, can massively impact all of those things. Food sensitivities can trigger them off. Ultra processed food. We know now the average UK adult eats about 57% of their diet's made up of ultra processed foods. And for kids, it's about 68%, which is really scary. And when I say ultra processed, I'm not talking about, it's scary, isn't it? I'm not talking about sauerkraut and processed foods that are good processed foods that have like been processed in that way for years to allow them sort of make them last and actually make them very beneficial. We're talking about these ready meals and these highly processed meals that are just a bag of chemicals generally put together a lot of the time. These can really...
It's so sad, and I think I find it quite hard to talk about this because I never ever want to come across as judgmental.
Yeah,
But
totally.
my daughter basically wasn't allowed processed foods. Like, she's 14 now. So, yeah, of course, she was allowed the odds, like fizzy drink. We were out for dinner and things like that. And she got a sweet at the shop. It wasn't as extreme as it can be. But in terms of her meals, my thought was like a kind of 80-20. As long as my child's getting healthy meals, then she can have the treats. But I saw other children where it wasn't the case. And it's a really hard subject because I'm not being judgmental. It comes down to a lack of education. No parent is deliberately harming their child.
No, of
They
course
just
not.
don't know how important it is for their children to be getting that nutrition and how it affects their sleep and how it affects their mood. And it's just, in this country at the moment, I think it's a major, major health concern because as well, it can affect mental health of the child as well.
Well,
And it's
100%.
extremely sad. I know that we do have people like Jamie Oliver promoting things like this, but I think that needs to be looked at a lot more because ultimately children aren't in control of what they're eating.
Yeah, totally. It's very true. I think with parents, it's hard because you're trying to fit in with society, but you're also wanting to protect your child. And we're all trying to do good by our kids.
Yes.
And I'm the same as you. My son will eat. I mean, God, when he was little, I remember spending hours cooking kids' meals and puree and all the rest of them. And that was what you were supposed to do then, and a long time ago. And then him just spitting them out, thinking, oh, good God, get me an Ella's Kitchen pouch because
Yeah.
I just can't keep doing it. But I kept persevering. And now he loves vegetables. He'll eat any food. But there was a point when I was thinking, I'm going to give up on this. But I thought, no, I can't because actually I just pushed through. This isn't me being a great parent, but I obviously had the information and the knowledge. And I thought, I'm just going to keep pushing and pushing. And I did, kept giving them the same things. And eventually he started eating them. And now, like I say, he eats pretty much everything. But I'm the same as you, that I also think if he's eating 80% of his diet, if he has 3 good meals a day, if he wants to eat half a packet of biscuits, I'm cool with that. He's absolutely ripped. He's really fit. I think, he's not an ounce of fat on him. He's
Yes.
healthy. So
Yeah.
it's trying to find that sweet spot, isn't it? I'll try and make as many sweets as I can or snacks. There's only
Yes.
just, it's only so much you can do. But I think you have to keep in your head to reduce the guilt and, to be able to survive and to allow your child to feel normal. It's trying to do as much as you can when you can.
And I'm glad that you touched as well on um, the 15-year-old body and the 60-odd-year-old body and medications and things like that do make a difference, because we're fed this, whatever calories go in, whatever calories are burned, this is how much you'll lose. And it's just not true, because I was very slim before I went on medication. And I'm really at the moment about to start really, really working on getting myself back down, not to as slim as I was because I was tiny, but I noticed when I got diagnosed with endometriosis and the several medications that followed, and then other conditions on top of that, everything just started to pile up on me. But I'm eating
Yeah.
the same food as my daughter and her dad, who mostly goes to the gym, and she's 6 stone, slim. And I'm like, God, you eat more than me. So I'm so, so glad that you've touched on that, because it's actually quite validating, because I have spent a long time just feeling like I'm doing something really wrong, but then I'm also looking at them going, well, why are they not overweight? So
Well, in clinic, there's a massive part of that, to be honest with you, Michelle, of like taking away the blame and the why is this, what am I doing wrong? Because, if you've got the education and you're eating the right foods, then you're not doing anything wrong. It's just you need someone to look at an overall view. Sometimes I'll look at clients and I think, oh my goodness, this is like dead easy because they eat packet of cornflake, 6 biscuits, some McDonald's. It's like, it's pretty obvious what we're going to need to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Some people come and I look and I think, oh my God, they eat almost better than I eat. They're amazing. It's so clean. But then there'll be little things, and it's looking at, that's why they do food and mood journals. So I can see, and a big questionnaire, I can see little gaps. And sometimes it could be we just change 3 things and
yeah.
their weight is like falling off them. I had a lady earlier on this year who was seeing a coach. It was a guy, and I think he thought just keep exercising and stop eating. So she went down to 1,000 calories and she was exercising every day, which is the worst combination for a menopausal woman. And she was exhausted, didn't lose. I think she said she gained weight. I mean, I imagine it was probably muscle, but she didn't lose any size, any weight. And like I said, it's not all about weight on the scales, but she just didn't change and she still felt rubbish. And obviously she was hungry, miserable,
She'd be
and
exhausted. She'd be
exhausted.
absolutely
She was
exhausted as
absolutely
well.
exhausted.
Yeah.
We stripped it right back because her diet was good. She just wasn't eating enough. We put more food in, more mixture, changed her exercise up. And it was so lovely when she wrote me a testimonial at the end. She just said, I'd all but given up hope. I just thought, because obviously she'd gone to what she thought was the most extreme and that didn't work. What do I do? We stripped it back and there was just about 3 or 4 tweaks we made and she stuck with them. But they were for her, they felt like quite big tweaks, but I knew she could smash them and she did. And she lost about a stone. The weight, she hadn't lost weight for years, and the weight just came falling off her. It's all about getting that metabolism, back to where it's happy. And food can really help with that. And timings of eating can help with that. And sleeping can help with that. And exercise the right sort. And stress management, making sure your liver's detoxifying. I mean, you wouldn't know for you if your liver detoxifying well or not. And that could be slowing things up, for you, which might mean your daughter and your family can eat what they eat, and you find like, why can't I eat that? I mean, we also got to look and think as a woman, metabolism's very different as well from a man. So I give women a whole hormone plate and lay it out of like, this is what needs to be on your plate in these proportions, and it will be different to the rest of your family. Your young kids and my husband and my son will have way more carbohydrates than me as a menopausal woman, but I will have just as much protein and probably more veg than them. A little bit.
Right.
Changing the plates. We all eat the same meal. I'm not into like cooking 3 different meals. I mean, who has time for that?
No, no.
But it's getting the right foods in every day that are essential to keep that liver detoxifying, that gut bacteria really good. I mean, they're doing studies now, and there's certain strains of bacteria, one called Akkermansia, that they're doing a lot of research into, because it's linked, when people have got a good amount of that, they generally have less weight problems. So we know, and when we do stool tests and we see it's low and they're dealing with, they can't lose weight, then it might be that we need to feed that bacteria a bit more, get it a bit more active to start enabling that metabolism to start working better. So it's a real massive picture that we look at, but it's not not your fault when you think you're eating what's healthy and you're
Yes.
exercising, but there's so much more to it. There's all things that are going on internally that's where I help you and give you the power back
Yes.
because I educate you. And then you're like, well, I know what it is now, and you know what to look for, and it's nice. It's
And
so much better.
that's what you know that Google doesn't know. It's
Yeah.
all that to look for. And that is actually so validating for me. And I think it will be for a lot of women because, like I said, this narrative of this is your basal metabolic rate and that's it. Taking nothing else into consideration has made me feel like, well, do I just give up then because
Exactly.
nothing's happening? And now
Yeah.
I feel like, no, actually, it could be a case of changing two or three things and then it could make a real difference. So that is so, so interesting. And I'm sure that information's already out there, but that needs to be widespread. What's the main dietary mistake you see with women struggling with hormone issues?
The main one I see is lack of protein. Honestly, so many women don't eat enough protein. We need about 1.2, 1.6 even grams per kilogram is like the lower end, which is a significant amount of protein per day. And so protein is the building blocks. It's just an amazing food for us. It's low in calories. It keeps us full for a long time. It doesn't give us those blood sugar spikes, so it stops the valleys and the mountains.
Yes.
It's the building block. Like I say, it helps repair, helps make our hormones. It helps keep the muscle on our body. And if we're weight training, that muscle becomes, obviously keeps us metabolically active. If we're eating a very low calorie diet, the body has to have protein for the heart and the essential functions, the brain.
Okay.
So it will take it from the muscles. Then our metabolism drops. So we're trying to reduce calories to lose weight, which we do need to be mindful of calories. But if we strip too much and we don't put enough protein in, the body will use us. And then we're sort of working against ourselves. Protein's
Yeah.
really, really important. It actually costs the body money energy to break down protein as well. So it's a brilliant, brilliant food to have. So you've got like fish, meat, eggs, poultry, you've got beans, you've got all the legumes, you've got tofu. So there's a mix there. That's a really massive one. And then fats can be another one. I still see quite a few people that think if we eat low fat, it's better. And, generally low fat means high sugar quite often because they've got
Right.
to flavour it with something. The trans fats and margarines and things, not nice fats for us, but actually avocado, oily fish, nuts, seeds, olive oil are so
Yes.
beneficial. And again, like the protein, they don't give us any spikes and dips, these valleys and mountains. We're much more rolling hill. So that means our mood's more rolling hill, our energy's more stable, and our
Yeah.
weight starts to stabilize because it's not up and down. The body feels so much better. I mean, our hormones are made from cholesterol, so we need that fat. Our brain is 60% fat. So if we haven't got enough
Oh,
fat in our
wow.
body,
Is it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's so
So we
interesting as
need
well.
fat.
I love this.
We really, really need to have fats in the diet. We need to watch about skipping meals because that can really stress the body. We need to watch about overdoing the caffeine. I see a lot of people just trying to
Yeah.
like curb their appetite with some more caffeine, or because they get a dip in that valley and then want to get something up quick. The body says, give me a coffee and a biscuit. So up they go, and then they're down and they're on this caffeine, and that's anxiety central. Plus it's
Yes.
exhausting at the end of the day. Plus it can really impact sleep at night. They're probably the main things I see: the lack of protein, lack of good fats, skipping meals, actually hydration, not drinking enough water is something very,
Yeah.
very common, and then overdoing it on the caffeine. So even just replacing half your coffees or teas a day with a herbal tea or water can be a massive game changer.
So it can be just a small change like that, which obviously can be a big change as well for some people who are really caffeine dependent. But
Yeah,
for somebody who's not like me, who I drink tea, I don't drink a lot of coffee, I will have one maybe sometimes. But if I started replacing 2 cups of tea a day with just a glass of water, I could maybe see a shift with something like that, which would be a really
honestly.
simple thing for me to do.
Lady who a client came to me, she was on 10 cups of tea a day, and she nearly cried when I said we need to take it down. Let's try getting it down to 2. And I thought it's going to be like a 5-week process to do that. The next week she came back and she said, I've done it. I couldn't believe it. I was looking through her food journal thinking, where's the tea? She must be hiding it. She's just not putting it in. Nope, come off it. And she's had a terrible headache for about 5 days, just coming
Right.
off it. And then she just said, oh my God, I feel like a different person. I've got so much more energy. I'm sleeping so much deeper, which means she's repairing and detoxifying way better. She said, the weight's just falling off. I can't believe it. All I've done is to reduce my tea. I can't, because people see tea or coffee, it's just a drink. What can be wrong with it, right?
Yes.
A dash of milk, there's no
Exactly.
black, no calories. But it's like you said with the calorie thing, it's what it's doing when it gets inside your body. That's what matters. If it's sending you on a big blood sugar spike, you're releasing potentially more insulin, which is a fat storing hormone, and you're up and down with your mood, energy, and weight. So we're not down with your weight, you're going up to potentially with your weight if you're just constantly running on this cortisol kind of picture. Very anxiety provoking as well.
The stress hormone, isn't it? Cortisol, that the stress hormone. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And it's the alpha hormone, so it's happy to sort of take control of the whole body, very disruptive to all the other hormones, and it doesn't need any encouraging. So we don't want really in menopause be adding more fuel to its fire, because actually without progesterone, and you get into menopause, the progesterone goes quite quickly, and without that around to buffer, things that would never normally stress us out really start to stress us out, which is not nice. And if you're adding coffee and tea into that and making yourself less able to cope.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense. It's just it's all about a minefield, and you bringing things like this together for people to understand is just great. So have you ever had a situation where somebody's came to you and they're like, listen, I'm not really sure if I'm perimenopausal or not, and then they've changed their diet and they're actually not, as maybe just hormonal imbalances from their diet?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, when we're looking at, if it's looking at something like cyclical things like PMS, PMDD, then, and they've had it for all their life, or we track, if we think it's like a certain age and we think, actually, is it always happening for 2 weeks before your period, that luteal phase? It's
Yeah.
more likely that it's maybe going to be linked with PMS, PMDD. But if it's something that's happening irregularly all over the place, then, and they're a certain age, if they're over 35, which is when you can start seeing the symptoms, it could be
Yeah.
perimenopause. But perimenopause is like it's almost like a bit of an umbrella as well. Like even at the doctors, they won't test you for it because the blood estrogen can be very high one day, very low the next. And
Yeah.
so, you're on this roller coaster again alongside the blood sugar roller coaster. And so you're up, down, up, down. So it's hard to know if you're in perimenopause unless what they tend to go now is by the symptoms, your
Yes.
age, and that kind of marries up. But there are lots of crossovers, like there's crossovers with the thyroid, because the thyroid can go a bit wonky at any time of life, particularly around perimenopausal age. And there's actually a
Right.
whole term called thyroid pause, which links perimenopause, thyroid, and insulin resistance into like a sort of Venn diagram. So you've
That's
got,
so
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
What was that
And
called
they cross
again?
over thyropause. So instead of menopause,
Thyroid.
it's thyroid,
We'll have
kind
a
of
look into that.
thyropause. Yeah. Get
Excellent.
symptoms that cross over a lot with that. Like you'll get the constipation, the brain fog, the weight gain, and that you'd think was perimenopause, but it could actually be your thyroid. So we always do a full check on thyroid, pretty much with most ladies, because, unless they've got something from the GP, which generally isn't a full panel, so you can't really tell what's going on further down the chain, we'll rule it in or rule it out. It's a simple one to do. And then you've got things like insulin resistance. Well, that can kick in at any time if you have this blood sugar dysregulation. It does get worse when estrogen drops in perimenopause and menopause, but still, if we can regulate blood sugar, sometimes all those symptoms can go, and they're not got perimenopause as such. I get women
Yes.
that come in that stop their periods, and then their periods come back, which is fantastic because the longer we can cycle, healthier. They consider that the more cycles you have, the healthier you're going to be as life goes on. When they've stopped, it's obviously not because they were necessarily in perimenopause. It's just something else has triggered that, whether it's cortisol, insulin, whether it's a thyroid, whatever it might be. And when we get things calmed down, those foundations, and their periods come back, it's brilliant. So there's a lot of hormones overlapping. Cortisol, obviously, a massive one that we've talked about, with being that alpha hormone, can really throw everything off. And again, through perimenopause age, you might have older parents, younger kids, your career's really busy, and so there's a lot of stress on you, which can
Yes.
then, which can trigger so many symptoms and not necessarily be right in the thick of perimenopause. So we have to
Ah,
rule out testing. Well, we do testing to rule things out. We'll look at track things and cycle things and see from there.
that's so good. So you're not jumping in with, okay, this sounds like perimenopause. You are looking at it and you're kind of picking away at the layers to see, well, is it this? Is it that? Is it that? No, this is what's left. It probably is perimenopause. And then you'll be able to make a more tailored plan for that person, which
Yeah,
is
exactly. I mean, we
amazing.
can't diagnose as nutritionists, but if they've come to me with a diagnosis from a doctor,
Uh-huh.
then we can say, obviously if it's a thyroid diagnosis, that's what it is. But if they come from the doctor saying it's perimenopause, again, it's still, but even the doctor is going by
Yeah.
symptoms, and they very rarely can tell through blood tests. So we just work together and just get them back to feeling, whatever you call it, we just want them to feel back to themselves, however that looks for them. Yeah.
So across your platforms, you talk a lot about supporting the body through transition. So what does that look like from a nutritional standpoint? You have absolutely touched on this already, but just if there's anything else that you'd like to say on that.
I think it's about the basics are prioritizing whole foods, looking at
Mhm.
your blood sugar balance, looking at that liver and the gut and how it's detoxifying, looking at your hydration, looking at your stress resilience, and then being consistent with it. The consistency is massive. So, really important to keep that, building those layers up, layering it up over time. So, gradually you're doing these things automatically. That's what I do with my one to ones. That's what I do with my group program that I
Yeah.
run. We just layer up. And then it's also about the lifestyle things as well. I know it's not nutritional, but that's really important. If you're not sleeping really well, eating a great diet, but your
Yes.
sleep's shocking, you're not going to get the benefits you would hope to get. Same as if you're not moving your body enough, or if you're moving it too much and not resting enough, if you're not getting outdoors. And for menopausal women, community is massive. In fact, for everybody, we know with the blue zones that are all over the world, one of the main things is all of those things, but very much so having a community. And I think when you get to
Yes.
your having a community, I know with my friends is just, it's like gold, because you can be
Yeah.
brutally honest and you realize, and that's what my Thrive program is, you realize you are not alone, and what you thought was something funky going on with you is actually happening to everyone else, and it's some sort of comfort in that,
Uh,
it's so important. So
I think what you're saying is so relevant to where I am at the moment. So during my hysterectomy, I lost one of my ovaries in my 20s with the endometriosis, and then my remaining ovary was taken this year. So I've went in a full surgical menopause, and I'm 40. So that was the kind of idea, was that we were preserving this ovary, therefore the womb, until I was 40. And there was different conversations about keeping the ovary. That would have been the best situation. But I was recently diagnosed with PMDD. When I say recently, I mean within the last couple of years. So they
mhm,
actually treated it very holistically. When I went to my pre-op, they were like, "What do you want to do with this ovary?" They
mhm.
said that they would try to save it if that's what I wanted, but then they might have to remove it anyway if it's too damaged. But from the PMDD side of things, and I was like, please just get it out of my body. I don't want to have a cycle. I can't cope anymore. And I was finding it really, really hard. And it's been night and day. So in one way I'm feeling great, but in another way I'm feeling a little bit lost in this abyss of none of my friends are really going through what I'm going through at the moment. And another way I'm like, wow, I've skipped the next 10 years of what could have been like really bad, especially with PMDD on top of menopause. So I'm like,
Yeah, God,
right,
yeah.
no, I
Oh my
love my
God.
estrogen patches. And it's taken a little bit of time for them to level out, but it's definitely been the best decision for me. I know it impacts other things in my life, but when you've just got to make that decision and just weigh everything up, and I was like, yeah, let's just do it. But when you're talking about needing community, that is exactly what I need right now personally. I just
Yeah.
need people who understand, or can say, I've still got 4 patches worth of stickiness on my bum. I need to get the baby oil and wipe it off. But just, real life stuff. So I'm not standing there going, oh no, I've still got like sticky stuff on me from my last patch. So, and I think normalising it is exactly what I need. So if I need that, then every woman in the same situation as me must need that, if that's the way that I'm feeling. So it's
Honestly.
so important.
It is so important. I mean, we go on girls' holidays still. We still go wild and have a great time, but there's an element of them now that is definitely therapy,
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
you have those chats where you're brutally honest, and you've got to have what I say to generally, I think most of the clients that I see have got someone or a group that they built up over time. By the age, when you get to your 50s, you know who your real friends are, and they
Yes,
are gold. You just need to treasure them because they you give to them, they give to you, and it's a very special relationship, I think, with women when they get together in that environment. Is the only
absolutely.
reason I'd want to come back as a woman because it's just such a lovely, it's just wonderful. I
It's
can't
like a
even explain what
sisterhood,
it is,
isn't
but you
it?
know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Even when I was off for 8 weeks from my work, and then going back to work and having women in different age groups that were also using hormone patches. And I had a sense of community when I went back to my work, because they're maybe a few years older than me, but I'm like, oh right, okay. They can talk to me about it, and oh, somebody forgot their progesterone. Oh, have you got a progesterone tablet? So I think that being at work is the kind of community that I've found where it's really normalised. So I think going back
Uh-huh.
to work has been really good for me in a lot of ways, actually. I'm not a kind of
Yeah.
stay-at-home person. I have found that I feel a lot more understood now that I'm around people that understand, basically. So how would you address the emotional toll of not being believed or supported when you're dealing with hormonal symptoms in terms of the GP and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. And I do see women who have been to their doctor. Obviously, you put your trust in your doctor. Your doctor only has a certain amount of time to deal with things, and there's only
Yeah.
so much they can do. So it's not on them necessarily. But as a woman going through hormone condition, you quite often just need to be heard. You just want someone to listen. And that's what we do. I just listen to them. I hold their space for them. And like I said to you before, I try and take the blame away from them so they can understand,
Yes.
well, this is, okay, I'm not, because with women, we always put ourselves down and think, oh, I'm doing something wrong. Sometimes, yes, you're eating 6 McDonald's a week. Well, that's probably not, I'm not drinking any water and 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious, but most women know that and are trying their hardest and still not getting anywhere. And I think that's when you take that blame away and say, look, this is what's happening in your body by the looks of it. Whether you've looked at it from a test, whether you've looked at it from the 15-minute chat I give them initially, well, I'll say, like, this is what's happening, I think, and this is what we need to do. If they can afford tests, we'll do tests. But if not, they all do a questionnaire, very detailed, which looks at their childhood right up to present day. So any traumas that have happened, there's a timeline. Looks at all the different symptoms for different body parts, the digestion, the liver, blood sugars, all the different hormones. And then we'll look at their food and mood journals. So when they eat,
Yeah.
what they eat, exercise, bowel movement. So it's very detailed. We can give them so much more time. And then when you've got that information and we do our plan together, or I create a plan for them and we have the first
Yeah.
hour, we go through it, whatever it is, they suddenly get the light because I'm giving them all the whys. This is why this is happening. This is why I'm telling you to
Yes.
do this. So I'm putting the ball back in their court and saying, I'm not saying do this, do that, stop doing that. And they're like, well, why? Why should I do that? I'm saying this is why. So it's up to you. And I've had so many women say, oh, I don't like that. I definitely don't want to eat or drink that. And I say, well, can I just tell you why? And then you decide. Honest to God, I'd say 99% of them after I've finished explaining, go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to really try. And inevitably they end up
Yeah.
liking it. But it's because they know they've got the knowledge and they know that it's good for them.
Yes. So you're empowering people to make their own choices about their nutrition. You're not there going gung ho on this is what you must eat, this is when you must eat it. You basically are saying that, but you're saying it's your choice, this is why, and you're giving all the information and make an informed choice on that. Because like you say, we know if we're eating all the McDonald's and the wine, we're going to gain weight. But probably when people come to your clinic, they've tried a lot of other things and they're actually just like, no, wait, I have eliminated so much here and I need to now go and speak to somebody. So for them to then feel like nothing worked and then get that result must just be such a lovely feeling for them and for you to see as well. So
Honestly,
it's just
it's
lovely.
so satisfying. If you look at the testimonials on my Instagram, it's not to do with me.
Yeah.
It's always a team effort. I always say to them, I'm giving you advice. You've got to do it. We work together. But they
Yeah.
say they felt heard. They felt understood. It gave them hope. And I think that's a big part of it from that stress, when you can take that stress away because they're just beating themselves up and don't know where to turn, feel hopeless. It's so disarming.
Yeah.
To feel that way, you're out of control. Plus, if you're going through the hormonal changes, whatever they may be, but it's PMS, PMDD, perimenopause, whatever, you're already hormonally a challenge. So you can't think
Yes.
straight. You haven't got as much energy. It's hard to know what to do. And you're like, oh, please, someone. So what I give them is honestly, that's what I do. And I call it their toolkit for life
Amazing.
because they've got this thing.
And it goes hand in hand with it's an informed choice, but it's also somebody saying this is how to do it. Here's help on it, not just go and
Yeah.
deal with it on your own. And you used such an excellent use of language that I think is good for anybody in any situation about feeling heard. It's just like they're like, right, somebody's hearing me, and I always know when I feel heard, I just kind of breathe and go, right. When you finally
Exactly that.
get to even if it's
Yeah.
with endometriosis appointments or other medical appointments or how I'm feeling with my mental health, when I meet that person that actually says, right, okay, I hear you, that is when my whole central nervous system just relaxes and I'm like, I feel a lot better even just from that. So you doing that initially is going to motivate people to continue and change it for themselves. It's fantastic.
Honestly, you see the change with them. You see them come on the first appointments looking really tired and obviously really looking stressed and struggling. And by week 2 or 3, I just watch their energy and their whole persona change. And I don't let them know initially, but I think, yeah, they're on, it's moving, it's shifting. You can see the dial shifting in front of them. And it's
That's
so
lovely.
rewarding. And I just,
Yeah.
honestly, it sounds really cliche, but it does. It makes me really smile because I think, we should all be able to feel like that, and we should
Yeah.
all be able to have access to that information, but it's confusing, and I want them to be able to reconnect with their body, and I want them to leave me thinking I know exactly what works for my body and what doesn't, and I've got this now. And it's so empowering.
And I love that, the toolkit for life as well. Because if they do find themselves slipping, or they go away on an all inclusive and they're just like, ah, whatever, I'm drinking, eating whatever, they can still come home and go, right, I know how to deal with this. And they're probably going to feel the effect of slipping, but they still have that to go back to. It's really amazing. So we've touched on this a little bit, but could you tell me a bit more about what blood testing you do at your clinic?
So I do different testing, lots of different testings. Blood tests, like private panels, you can get so much more. So for instance, something like the thyroid, if you go to your GP, you'll get TSH, which is actually a pituitary hormone, and you may get T4, which is an inactive thyroid hormone. So you may get T4, you may not, depends where you live, really, it seems to be.
Right.
But when we do the full panel, so we look at the T3, because is your T4, converting into the actual T3 that you can use? Is it converting into reverse T3? So your bloods look good on the TSH, like you're making enough, but actually it's
Ah,
being put into the storage account where you can't actually access
right.
the thyroid.
Yep.
Plus, we'll look at antibodies because a lot of people have autoimmune type of picture going on where their body's created antibodies in the gut that are attacking the thyroid. And that's a whole different support plan we put together for that. So thyroid, that's just one panel, but the blood tests are amazing. Then we've got things, they'll look at nutrients, they'll look at your inflammation markers, they'll look at full iron panels as well to see a picture, a wider scope. But then we do things like a Dutch test, which is a urine test, which
Right.
measures hormones. It's dry urine test for comprehensive hormones. It's an acronym. And it measures the hormones over 24 hours. So when you go to the GP, get one blood test, it might not be the right time of your period. It might just be it is just one snapshot in time, whereas this will give you a few readings throughout a day, so we can get a pattern of what's happening with your hormones over all of a day. And that's really important for estrogen, see what happens with progesterone, but also for your adrenals, because you can see, do you
Yes.
wake up in the morning, get a really good spike, which you should do for cortisol, and then do you gradually come down through the night, or do you spike up again at night and can't get back to sleep? So you can see all of that. And you can also see your liver and how it detoxifies the estrogen, which is really important for breast cancer risk. If you're someone that
Right.
doesn't metabolize estrogen very much quickly and efficiently, that could then be building up in your system, which obviously increases your risk. And you may be going down a pathway that's more damaging. So you can see that on this, and maybe going down a more DNA damaged pathway than a protective pathway. So it's a really cool test, that one is.
That is so, so interesting. I've never heard anything about that. I've obviously heard of the blood testing for the gene mutations, things like that for breast cancer, but I've not heard of that. As extremely interesting.
It's really interesting. And then we'll do comprehensive stool tests. So the GP will check for blood, and they'll check if you've got an infection, but we'll do a look at the whole bacterial composition to see if you have that Akkermansia we talked about, see if you've
Yeah.
got enough of the good guys in there, not too much of the bad guys, if you've got any parasites or candida, which can all impact your hormones, as you know now. So we look at the inflammation and the immunology in there. So we have access to any test. Most of the labs I use are in the States, and you can pretty much test anything you wanted to test these days. So that's really good.
Excellent. That's really, really good, because I don't know if I would have known that nutrition clinics do that. I think there's maybe a crossover in my idea of what a nutritionist and what a dietitian is. So you've kind of
Yeah.
clarified, because I've seen a dietitian and there was no test. So you've really clarified for me, like,
Oh,
what the
okay.
difference is, and that's really, really helpful.
Hmm.
Can nutrition help support women when they're coming off hormonal contraception?
Well, so trying to get them back into a natural rhythm, because people are put on the pill. It regulates periods, but what it actually does is just stop their periods happening, and
Yes.
basically artificially creates a withdrawal bleed if they have a bleed on their cycle.
Right,
And so that
okay.
whole ovulation stops in the background. So we work to get everything in place so hopefully they can start ovulating again when they come off. And that's where the magic happens. Because yes, it's a bleed, which might be inconvenient for some people, but ovulating is this amazing kind of process that happens in the background that's protecting our bone and
Yes.
our brains and our heart. It's more than just a bleed and having a baby. It's a magical orchestra of hormones that get together and do their thing. And so we want to have cycles where we, as much as we can, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can listeners find you if they want to learn more about your work, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to set up a call with you?
Yeah. So they can go to my website. It's lucychilderley.co.uk. I'm very active on Instagram as well, which is at Lucy Childerley Clinic, and that links to Facebook, and I am on LinkedIn.
You're across all the platforms. That's excellent. And I'm going to throw in a question as well. What's your opinion on the Monjaro and these weight loss injections that people are taking at the moment? Have you got an opinion on that?
I think the jury's still out. Obviously, they've been used for diabetes for a long time. They've changed it slightly for weight loss. And there are some negatives. Obviously, some people with pancreatitis, and there's people's mood can drop. People can lose a lot of muscle from what we talked about before because they're not eating enough protein.
Yes.
And those, there's risks with all of those. And then there's with the risks with that, it's like, how do you come off?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't need to do it, so maybe that's why I feel like I wouldn't want to do it just at the moment.
Yes.
But I know a lot of people that are on it. I think it needs a bit more time to just iron out the differences and see. But if you speak to anyone in the States, the nutritionists over there, they're all for it. They think it's amazing. With anything, I'm never the innovator, the one that's there rather at the beginning when new things come out. I like to just wait and let's see what happens and then decide what I think. So I obviously can't recommend it, but the great thing is you can do a lot with GLP-1 peptide with yourself by your diet. So having like resistant starches, putting prebiotic fibers in feeds that GLP-1 peptide, keeping that gut, which is where that GLP-1 peptide's kind of living, make that gut happy, really healthy, and you can naturally suppress your appetite. It won't be for days on end, but you'll get the signals to say, I'm full now and I can stop. And then you'll get hungry again a little bit later. So you can definitely regulate it yourself, but obviously it's a lot easier to take something. And I think you've got to weigh up your risk. If you're really overweight, that's going to be causing you all sorts of issues with inflammation, disease, risk of heart attack, stroke. So you've got to shed that weight, and that Monjaro can be something that can just get on with that and get that done fairly quickly for you to put you in a safety zone. But I just feel like everyone needs to have an exit plan, I think, to know, how do I come off? I mean, and who knows, maybe you will be able to stay on it forever, but it's still early days to know. And if you're doing like HRT, you've got to think about your progesterone because it slows gastric emptying. If you're taking oral progesterone, you may need to look at that because you'll risk then otherwise of putting in the estrogen and not having enough progesterone to protect the endometrial lining could increase your risk, obviously, of longer term sort of cancer things. So you've got to be really savvy with it.
And then that could even go in hand with endometriosis, because the reason that I'm on progesterone, a lot of people have asked me, they said, you've not got a womb, why are you on progesterone? And I'm like, because I still have endometriosis. It's much better than it was. I had stage 4 bowel involvement, bladder involvement, infiltrating, like frozen pelvis, everything that you could have with endo, basically, I had.
Bless you.
It was a really, really long journey, and I'm very relieved to be out of it. But I was actually like, I don't know. So I asked my doctor. I knew the hysterectomy and what I had done was not a cure, but she said it's to stop the cells that will still be in there from developing. That progesterone is actually really, really important to stop the endo coming back, especially on scar tissue. So the GLP-1 could then have an effect on that. If my progesterone, for example, wasn't being metabolized properly, could so that's really interesting. I'm not really considering going on it because, like you say yourself, it's just not been around long enough. And I really want to see what happens when people come off it, because if it's a case that everyone's just going to put all the weight back on, then there's 0 point. And also, you touched on it can have effect on mood. And after all those years in the PMDD, I'm like, I'm not messing with anything. Even though I now don't have PMDD, I'm still like, I'm not wanting to mess with anything that could affect my mood. But then, like you say, if I was much bigger than I am and I needed it done quickly and come off, maybe I would take that risk. But I'm so glad that you've brought that up, because there is a direct link now there that I know from that and endometriosis with the metabolising the progesterone. I was going to ask you, if a listener is feeling completely overwhelmed with their symptoms and they're just not sure what to do, what would you say to them right now?
I would say that your hormones, our hormones dictate how we look and how we feel and how we think and how we behave. So I think we just have to really look at trying not to get overwhelmed, because it's some, it is sad if we feel this way, but it is avoidable because we're so much at the end of our fingertips if we want to go in there. We're not broken. I would say to them, you're not broken. Your body's just trying to ask for help. And it can come across as overwhelm and feel like they're out of control. But there is a way forward, as you've discovered, and you don't need to do everything at once. But those small, gradual changes, that consistency is where you see major gains in fairly short period of time. If you think you've got to 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, of not feeling good, if you feel good in a few months is major progress. And that does happen when you do small, incremental, consistent changes. And just knowing that you're not alone and that there's a lot of support out there from the right people to get you where you want to get to. So yeah, there's lots of options available. Honestly, those things, it's just keeping with trusting the process and keeping going. And everyone's body moves at different stages depending on where they're at and how messed up their metabolism might be.